Okay, this is a book without a slipcover. This is Rated X by Mary Lewis Coakley. And despite the title, this is actually a book about television. This is a moral critique of television. And this was published in 1977, I believe. Let me just double check. Yep, 1977. And I find that interesting because around that time, I have several books from around that time where various authors were discussing, the impacts of television on the public at large. And Mary Coakley's book is very much from a religious perspective of the effect on the moral compass of the general population and how they digest that information. And I agree with probably 70% of her book. I think this is a good companion book to Four Arguments for the Elimination of Television. I'll link that at the end of this video. I think that is an important companion piece to this, because Four Arguments for the Elimination of Television is more from from a sociological perspective of just the effect of television on humans. Mary Coakley's work is more the effect on the soul, or the effect of, it still addresses the effect on the population at large, but more about on moral issues, how people are coaxed into believing things that they normally would not, or presented with ideas that they would normally not take on. And she starts it out, I'm just going to read her first couple of paragraphs, because I caught myself saying this in anger the other day to someone, and I'm shocked that this was her opening salvo in her book, which I think is very telling. And it's why get married when you can live together? The God has spoken, our household God, yours and mine. He happened to speak these words on All's Fair, but he has repeated the same thought on dozens of other shows. This God of ours, of course, that electronic box we call TV, we give him or it a place of honor in our home, in our living room, and we enshrine duplicate deities, big and small, in a variety of places, from the basement workshop to the bedrooms on the second floor. What does this God do for us? Well, it is great at implanting ideas, and I'll stop there, but the idea of television as God is something that swirled around in my head for a while, so that really jumped right out at me. But that really is how television has become to the modern culture. Questioning so many things is allowed, but questioning the very veracity or the authority of television and broadcast news is really, by its diehard adherents, is heresy. A lot of people, when you start questioning what is on television, why it's on television, why they believe what they believe, you will run into a opposition, much like you would if you were speaking to someone in a cult, because the ability of people to defend their deity is so strong, or their desire to defend their entity is very strong. So on that note, I just wanted to talk about, she makes a lot of good points in this. Again, I would recommend this if you are if you read Four Arguments for the Elimination of Television and you want to read something from that time period. The fascinating thing about books like this is, written in 77, it's interesting to see what has happened in the last, 45 years or so, since this was written. It's interesting to see what all has transpired, and a lot of the predictions made by some of these authors about where they saw some of this stuff going is real important. And I am personally of the opinion, and I think this is something to consider while when you are digesting television or mass media in general, is television and mass media are a medium of exceptions. And by that, I mean, everything presented is typically an exceptional situation stated as though it were fact. So you're given an exception of something that normally you would look at that as the minority view, but television can amplify that minority view to be the prevailing view. And then you start to doubt yourself and you start to say, my own experience must be the minority view. So even what I'm able to verify with my own eyes, I suddenly discount in favor of what I'm being presented on television. So it has a way of subverting reality and saying, you don't trust your lying eyes and ears. You can't be right on that. You don't have the ability to check these things out. We do, and here's reality. So you, as somebody who might have friends, relatives, people involved in something overseas or see things right in front of you, or you might even be an eyewitness to something, and you will be willing to discount that experience. You will discount your own experience in favor of the experience presented on television. You'll say, well, mine must be the exception. That must be what's happening here. Another example of that is the humor devices on television are often very antisocial. Insult humor has been a mainstay of television now for decades. But that insult kind of humor, that here we're going to make a joke about this guy to his face, and then he's going to laugh, we're all going to laugh and just go on our way. And it's the kind of thing that in real life could get you punched in the face. But on television, that is the norm. You can insult someone. You can literally make someone sitting right next to you the butt of the joke, point out their worst moments, their most embarrassing moments, and everyone is supposed to laugh along with you. And I've seen people actually do this in real life, and a lot of times people do laugh right along with them. But when that doesn't work, when it is met sometimes with violence, or met sometimes with somebody saying, why did you just talk that way to me? Or, how dare you? People go, whoa, that dude needs to chill out a little bit. Instead of saying, wow, I just imitated radically antisocial behavior in my daily life and it ended badly. Maybe I should check that. So television has a way of getting us to believe in exceptions as being the rule rather than the other way around. So we question our own experience and we start to believe what we see on the television as being the actual reality, rather than actual interactions with other human beings. A great example of that, I have an acquaintance who her husband works for a local government, and I'll try to keep it vague for privacy purposes, but he was involved in a court case about voter fraud. And it was voter fraud that went against her normal political views. And she was surprised at the way that she knew from her speaking to her husband how the actual case was going down, but she was shocked at how it was presented on television. It was presented as though there was no voter fraud, that this was all just overactive prosecutors and all. And she was like, I know otherwise, because my husband's working on this. She just couldn't fathom that these things she couldn't square them with each other. And again, she thought that she was just seeing the exception. So she was able to discount her experience with her husband, knowing that case, and just thought maybe just that one time television got it wrong. And even if she was able to accept that she was actually watching a real voter fraud case unfold, the idea that this could be happening on a large scale was just beyond the scope of her understanding. So things like that, where again, and this is where I challenge you to think of instances in your own life where you had an attitude or an idea of how things were, and that attitude was shaped by television, not by your actual experiences. And then later you found out that those things were very wrong. A good anecdote of mine is during the first Gulf War, I remember all the footage of the Patriot missile and how that was awesome. Patriot missile kicked butt, took names, and that was like one of the crown jewels of the first Gulf War, was all this footage of Patriot missiles intercepting Scud missiles, and wasn't that amazing? And we stuck it to those Iraqis. Well, later on, I trained with several guys who had been worked on Patriot missile batteries and had been transferred over to retrain as tracked vehicle mechanics. So, of course, we were all like, hey, man, that's really cool. You guys worked on the Patriot missile. And all of them, and there was probably about a half a dozen guys or so that I knew at the time that switched over. They were all very quick to say, do not believe what you saw about the Patriot missile on the evening news. That was not, it did not work like that. It did not go down like that. That was part of the pro-war, that was part of the war message put out there for the public. But he said, several guys told me that was not, the Patriot missile was not that reliable. And that was kind of a blow to me, because I was like, wow, this like feel-good patriotic message from the first Gulf War was not what I thought it was at all. So anyway, fascinating stuff. Again, good companion to the 4 arguments for the elimination of television. I'll link that at the end of the video, along with Toxic Sludge is Good for You, which is another good critique of modern public relations companies. So there you go. Rated X. Poor title, really, because I think a lot of people probably avoided this because of the title. Rated X by Mary Louise Coakley from 1977.